For those of you, I'm sure people looked at, if you don't know Christoph already, I'm sure you've checked him out, but he is the CSO of Curie Bio, a long history of work in pharma. So correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but used to be Global Head of Oncology Drug Development at Sanofi, Unit Head of Oncology Drug Discovery at Novartis, 12 years in biotech, co-founded a number of very famous biotech companies, including Celsius Therapeutics, MoMA, CSO of Blueprint Medicines, I'm probably forgetting others, but a long history of working in pharma and in biotech. Moved into venture, you were at Third Rock Ventures and now one of the co-founders of Curie Bio. And I want to talk a bit about how all of that experience led you to found a new kind of venture capital firm. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about why developing new drugs is so hard. And I think I've read that you've contributed to the development of 10 marketed drugs. Is that right? Right. So that's a lot by anyone's standards. And the odds of succeeding in biotech are brutal. Most things fail. So based on all of your experiences in pharma and biotech, why do you think drug development is so hard? Why do most things fail?
I mean, maybe the more interesting question would be, why are sometimes drugs making it all the way through and get approved and then have this impact, right? That's the other side of that coin. Like in football, why is this guy never scoring a goal? Maybe that's not very interesting, but it would be very interesting to discuss why is this one person scoring so many goals consistently, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, well, certain companies or certain environments or certain geographies or whatever that is. I don't know. It's in the end, it's the science needs to be right. I don't think that hope on the science side is a very good strategy. It's like, yeah, it's so hard. Let's try like something stupid, right? That's not a good excuse, really. It's like I think the science has to be really tight. Drug discovery, I think, is easier. The art of sort of making the molecules or the drug embodiment. It used to be like maybe 20 years ago, most drugs failed because of the drug embodiment. There was issues with human PK in the clinic, with formulation. That time kind of gone. Therefore, I think we can make it, it's just sort of the science needs to be matched with a medical need, and then it's okay. Sometimes I think it's not that hard.
I think a lot of, Can you explain why? Okay, you can say that. You've helped develop 10 drugs. Most people haven't. So you obviously understand a fair bit about what helps you succeed versus fail.
I mean, there's a component of nose for value, I think, right? Like, where it's like, hey, this is something that you could believe in and put your time in and just sort of have that vision, or you can see it that this could work in your head. I mean, a good test for at least I think is for people to say like, hey, you know what? You have this idea or you have this concept or whatever. Let's make it very simple. Let's say the drug that you are now describing gets made exactly the way you have it in your head. Explain to me, when that's given to people, how that actually will work and have an impact on disease. Like, explain that to me. And then very often people get stuck in this. I'm like, okay, then it's not a great idea, right? Like, therefore, if you even in your head can't finish your own story in that,
Is that because they think the drug, that they think it's really cool what they're working on? And
Yeah,
therefore
it's
it
like,
should
look,
impact-
there's this interesting sort of scientific concept, and like I've worked on 12 years on it, and now I have this thing, and there's this cell paper, and like, no, whatever, and like, okay, keep finishing this. Now you have this drug. How should it look like? How potent should it be? Like, what's its safety profile? What's its selectivity? How should that? Okay, keep going. And then which patients do we give it? Like, why? Like, and then the magic must happen. I'm like, oh, we have a problem, right? Like, because we tend to work in PowerPoint thinking in our industry, where you go next slide, and in between that slide, the previous slide and the next slide, you're cheating. You're cheating with your brain because you're not really logically following through. That's why, like at Curie, for example, we do silent reading. We don't do PowerPoints. We believe in the power of writing things out because you can cheat less.
That's really interesting, yeah. I didn't think about PowerPoint as cheating, but...
No, PowerPoint itself, but the people using it do.
Okay. So you're one of 3 co-founders of Curie, and really interesting group of people. I know Zach, one of your co-founders, comes from the tech industry, Lexi obviously biotech. How did you guys get together, and why did you decide to build a venture capital firm like Curie? And can you talk a little bit about like the principles behind it?
Curie has 2 components. One is sort of the venture part, taking money from other people and giving it to other people and trying to make money in between. I mean, that maybe was a simplification of what venture is, but it's not so far off from reality. And then, but we thought that's not sufficient, and like we wanted to sort of, the vision behind Curie is that when we built our own first companies, what would we wanted to have in place that actually really helps and support us, because building a company is really super difficult, and everybody's making mistakes and like doesn't know and gets screwed over by somebody. And it's really tough, and we wanted to like provide something that helps founders build their company. And that's why we sort of added to Curie a second arm, which is hardcore drug discovery. If now at Curie we are 110 people, and 90 of those 110 are drug makers or drug developers, and amongst all of us, we have more than 60 approved drugs, and to really fractionally staff those companies with top people in the industry that a founder usually or a young company cannot afford. If you start a company, you cannot get the best structural biologists because it's young, it's crazy, it's unproven. And like asking somebody is like, hey, you are the best structural biologist, like, give up your job and like work on this, and like, it's tough. Also, you don't need them full time, and you don't need them throughout the whole life cycle of your company. Therefore, how can you actually, from a cost perspective, but also from a talent perspective, reconcile that? And we're like, okay, good, we'll just like hire all those people and then fractionally staff them into companies. And then they have the best people for that time. Therefore, that was sort of, therefore now Curie is those 2 components. We have $1.25 billion under management, but then we support those companies hard to drug discovery with more than 100 people.
So when you guys were working in biotechs and building biotechs, the problem you saw was that it wasn't necessarily, well, financing is one problem, but it wasn't necessarily that the VCs weren't investing. Was it that they weren't able to provide that specialist input, or what problem came first, I guess, is my question, in typical venture capital?
I mean, when you started asking the question why is drug discovery so difficult, I don't think the first or most limiting factor to be mentioned should be the money. Mm-hmm. You'll get it somewhere from somehow, like I think the hardest part is most likely that making that drug embodiment after all. And you have to have this brilliant idea, this insight, like that sparking moment, but then it's sort of a tough process. And classical VC provides you with the money, which is extremely important, but is very often not that helpful otherwise. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of the truth. And that's okay. It's not their job to be also the best drug discoverer, because then they might have chosen that path. Their job is sort of to invest, and that's why it's called VC. And it's like, talked to a friend of mine like last weekend, and I like football a lot, and and the guy called me and said, like, an Arsenal fan, right? And said, hey, we just beat West Ham and scored 83 minutes. And I'm like, okay, let's take this apart.
Right.
It was Leonardo Trossard who scored that goal in the 83rd minute. And as far as I remember, you were sitting on your couch in your living room in front of the TV, and therefore, what was actually your contribution to say, we just scored, who beat West Ham? Maybe not you, actually, right? Therefore, it's a little bit on the VC role. We, got this approved. Really?
Yeah.
Board meeting sort of attendance, where you sort of smart ass on things that happened in the last quarter. It's maybe not sort of the most meaningful contribution after. I know that's a little bit critical, but it's kind of true. Therefore, I think what's missing is that drug discovery sort of knowledge that that knows for value of what works and how to make this thing. And it doesn't matter if this biologics or cell therapy or gene therapy or small molecules or whatever, to kind of make that thing. And that's so hard. And people start their companies and they're super excited and they spend all their time on it. And then they hire this loser as a medicinal chemist. I'm like, how can you do this?
Sure, no one in here has hired a loser as a medicinal chemist.
They're hiring the best medicinal chemist they could get. What about that?
Right.
We're still a loser, mostly.
Okay.
I mean, this is so hard, right?
Yeah.
This is most of those things fail, and then you take this average medicinal chemist. How could that work? And then you pair them with an average biologist, right? And then hire somebody who is really good in HR. This will be working, right? That's not a recipe. You cannot start a company that way. And we all do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We scramble, whatever. We are from northern London or whatever because they have a short commute and shit like that, right? Yes. This is a global problem.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And the best medicinal chemist on earth.
Yeah. But you're right, most people cannot access.
No, you cannot do that. That's the problem, right? We complain it's so hard and we didn't make a drug yet and I've been 30 years and I've still not made a drug. It's your own fault. Okay? Likely.
Likely.
Okay? Get the best medicine chemist, get it going, pair them with the best, and then maybe you have a chance.
Yeah.
If you're lucky. If that's the setup we need, right? And if we're kind of trying to sort of help with that.
Okay, so the Curie story is around so to your point, is it really that hard? Well, one of the reasons it's less hard is that you use the best people in the world, right? That will de-risk it somewhat. I think it allows you to make faster decisions, kill things faster, make better decisions. But so you didn't see this model anywhere else in VC world or investing?
No, not really. And the reason is because it's not possible financially. That's the real problem, right? Because VCs have that problem. I was partner for 8 years at Third Rock, and Third Rock is a very successful venture fund. And we didn't have that type of service at all. I mean, that's just like, in spite of the fact that Third Rock is known for its scientific approach and but it's just like day and night in terms of the contribution. We sort of work the company like a classical a classical Curie company has maybe 2 or 3 employees, and then there are maybe 10, 15 people from Curie involved, and that's sort of on a daily basis, and like that sort of very, very, it's a different scale, I would say. But as a VC, and this is why it doesn't exist, and that's your question, is how do you finance that?
Yeah.
Because all you have is your management fee. That's all you have. You're nothing else. Because the rest goes to the company, right? Therefore, and you cannot pay a team of 100 drug discoverers out of your management fee. For those of you who are in VC, this is totally impossible. Yeah. My team costs $15 million a year. Where should I come from? Therefore, we sort of, the unique thing, what enabled that was that we were the first fund that, well, we were the first group that raised a fund for running the operations.
Yes.
Usually you can't raise for running an operation in no industry, actually. And we were able to raise $280 million to sort of run that.
And that's the Curie Ops.
And that's the Curie Ops, and but we provide that service for free to the teams, and we charge 7.5% common equity, and which is great for the young startups because they don't pay for it when money is most expensive, namely in the beginning. It's all without any cash payment. They only need to pay when they are successful, because then 7.5% equity. And between here and then, there's no cost, yeah. Which is super important because now you have this experienced team without spending cash. And now you basically all your costs are in variable costs towards CROs. You don't need a lab, you don't need like a big thing. You can run this with CROs, which we sort of operationalized. We are one of the biggest partners for CROs because now we have 38 companies in our portfolio, and therefore now you get that really, you're very cost efficient. You have almost no fixed cost in your company, and now it is possible to get from an idea to a development candidate for $8 million, $9 million, and to get to clinical proof of concept for $45 million from the idea. And now you're competitive to the Chinese companies. Now you sort of are in the zone where you can return a multiple that's attractive, even if you sell your company for whatever, $1 billion only or something. Therefore, then, it works. Then you have enormous returns, right? If you spend $50 million, you sell for $1 billion, you have a 20x return.
So for the people going back to your point about talent, you've got people that work in Curie Ops, and these are the drug hunters. You also have people called co-pilots, which might be useful to explain who those people are. I mean, they operate in a similar way, but do you want to maybe talk about why you have people called, what do they do?
Yeah. I mean, the first group of drug hunters or drug makers, you can think about fractionally staffing. It's what we do, and it's very good, because what I just described as like trying to get the best structural biologist when you are very early, which is a real dilemma, that also applies for your CEO, for example. It's not easy to get sort of a CEO who is your long-term CEO when, that needs to work on business development and clinical trial and operations and whatever, and you are actually at a phase of hit finding. Like, why should that person join? Therefore, you have sort of because biotech, you have this disconnect, right? You're very discovery oriented. It's like, then it's, making the drug kind of thing, and then it's clinical development. Therefore, in a way, you shift 3 times in terms of your culture, in terms of your thinking, in terms of your approach. And therefore, how can you have a CEO who can span all of that and is the best at it, at each phase? Therefore, that's really tricky too. Therefore, why don't you hire your best CEO once you have to raise in a syndicate? And prior to that, work it, and like this is where our co-pilots come in.
Yeah.
People like myself and others who really help in that phase and sort of like help guide the companies with the founders, and then switch over to that predictable CEO that sort of stands for stability and and trust as sort of you raise more money in a syndicate.
And the co-pilots will work on 3 or 4 companies at a time?
Yep.
Right. And how if I were, stepping out of pharma, very experienced, looking around the market, hearing good things about Curie, and I want to come see about working with Curie, how do you vet these people, and how do you incentivize them? Like because they could go somewhere else and work in a big NASDAQ listed company or something. Like what is it? How do you retain these guys and women?
Yeah, if they would prefer to go in a big company, that's what they should do. They're not right for us. But we are virtual first. For our people work wherever they want, which is good from a talent perspective.
Yeah.
Because there might be somebody really good in Florida. I don't know, but just saying. Therefore, that's good. And then we sort of operate in a different way. We come together every 6 or 7 weeks, 9 times a year, and for a week. And we do this in Boston, and we sort of are for this whole week together in one room, no breakout sessions, no podium, no screen, just conversation as one group, and it's very truth-seeking, it's very authentic. Therefore, it's not for everybody. This is relatively sort of radical candor type of driven culture, which we need when we try to be in this truth-seeking sort of thing. But we sort of take some of the elements that we know from tech and apply them to life sciences, because I think our industry is an interesting industry, right? Because we are so driven by the difficulty of making a drug. That's why we don't pay a lot of attention maybe to recruiting and culture and HR and IT and, tools and processes. And you see this, in our life science industry, I would argue HR and recruiting is amateur. It's not the way Amazon recruits. Or the tools and processes that Google, maybe not Google, some companies have in place. And I think we try to work a lot on that sort of from our talent team and from our IT infrastructure, which are all very small groups. There tend to be people from outside of the life science industry. And I think that's to make that more professional, because you want to have your people operate on the top of their license. And that's all they do. We're all operators, but we operate on sort of that top of our license, and everything else can be done by whatever, tools and processes. And you earlier talked today with Reed about sort of AI, and I think where we see AI, and we do a lot with it, is in that sort of human interaction piece, because I think AI has enormous impact, and even more so in near future, in all the things that people don't want to or shouldn't do. And all the shit we have to deal with, right? That can all be done by some agent, right? And then we free up the time and the energy to the creativity, to the ideas, to like, you know, like putting things together and like, but everything else can be done. Can filter out whatever. Like we get at least 80 company applications a week at Curie. Therefore, that's, if you include Saturday, Sunday, that's about 10 a day. But that's about 5,000 a year. And we look at all of them. And we respond to every idea that gets submitted to Curie in detail. With several external reviewers, with like internal reviews, with a rescue system within Curie so that we don't miss sort of, you know, anything unorthodox or like crazy but cool. Therefore, we put enormous energy into all the passes, so to speak, that we sort of provide, because we think we owe that to the founders, because not everybody has an idea,
I mean,
even if they're bad ones.
That's very hard to do, to respond to everybody.
It's very hard, and it's a lot of work, and like we said, we do it, again, top of the license, therefore Alexis Borisi and myself see every single application. Because we don't believe that, you know, I love associates, but like, you get like, hey, associate, this is the way, whatever, they filter out things. Like, how can they do this? They are in the beginning of their career. They missed the paradigm change thing in it. Therefore, then it doesn't come to the partners or whatever. Therefore, we decided that actually we try to free up people like myself to see everything. And that's not possible if you were not to be able to do this with AI. Therefore, in our case, the super system, like, you know, all the slide text gets translated into abstracts that are written. It's all done automatically, like within seconds. It dissects out the founders and founders' name, and with that makes sort of connections between all the founders and the ecosystem they're operating with, the work they've done, the publication they had in the past, things like all that sort of happens within seconds, and then comes sort of with recommendation and comparison, which companies have we seen in the same space that are sort of the targets and why, and we combine that with an automatic algorithm, like in a Google search, who is best suited within Curie, based on the Curie sort of members' experience to evaluate this and to assess that, and like, you know, that's all automatic. Therefore, like, the second it comes in, it's all there, and I know Andy would be the best person to sort of review this out of our 100-people team, because he has worked on this before. Like, this is all within seconds, okay? Therefore, it becomes much easier then to use your nose for value that right now AI cannot provide.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you if that's a good idea or not. But it can do everything else for you. So that all you need to do is apply your nose for value and that judgment. And I think that's the power of AI.
And the nose for value bit, is that's the founders, or you're involving?
No, like, top of the license, and for other things, whatever. And then if this is a chemistry problem, then our best chemist goes for that, right? Therefore, it goes anywhere in the organization.
Yeah. So if there's people in the audience here who are thinking about, maybe is what they're working on interesting enough to be a Curie company, what would they do? They just go on the website, fill out the form, send you some stuff. This AI spits out all the information, you read it, you think, oh my God, this is amazing. Then what happens?
Yeah, then we engage. We don't like pitches, right? Like, in terms of like, because again, it's too superficial or whatever. We like sort of to study an idea, trying to understand. That's the hardest part, to understand what people actually
are
trying to do sometimes. And then we have this process what often we call elevation, where we sort of, because a good idea in drug discovery it can only have two flavors, in my opinion. It can be a biological insight, where you discover something and you understand something better that people didn't understand before. It can be a target, can be a pathway, can be like a mechanism, can be like a connection you make, can be a paradigm change. But like there's a biological insight that you have. And then what you need to do is you need to combine it with drug discovery. Like, okay, out of this biological insight, we need to make a drug. That founder might not know that because like they are this biological insight type of world person. Therefore, why do we even, as a VC, demand that they also come up with a drug embodiment strategy? They're not the expert in that. If then we call that elevation. If a person comes like have this insight, and we're like, okay, cool, we'll try to elevate that. We'll try to actually work with you on like, what could that drug embodiment look like? Or sort of an idea can be a technology advancement. That's the second form of an idea, where you say like, I can do something much faster than before, or I figured out how to get selectivity into like, into this drug target problem because like a certain technology or whatever, or like chemistry or like, bioengineering question, or like there's some technology advancement that now enables to do something. And very often those people do not have an idea for the application. Like they're like, I could show it on this, or like, but don't necessarily know what to kind of apply that to. And then we work with those founders to say like, hey, this could be applied over here, or could we make that, or like this would be the best. Or your target choice is a toy, but it's not the best program kind of thing. And then sort of work that. Therefore, we don't believe necessarily in this company concept thing. People pitch you and like, it's much more like, here's the substantive sort of background around my idea.
So you definitely don't need a PowerPoint, back to your PowerPoint comments, of, like a plan, and you're happy to just get it.
I mean, it's great when people have plans, it's just like usually not. So it's much better to sort of articulate that inside your idea, because that's sort of where the innovation happens, right? It's like, oh, shit, now I can do this. Like, okay, what can we use that for? Like, and if that's there, then you have a company concept, right?
And back to your point on the nose for value, when you meet scientific founders, how do you gauge that sort of real inherent like passion and drive versus people who are just really happy doing really cool science, but don't necessarily worry so much about the translation and how it's going to actually get to patients? Like, does that matter when it comes to one of your founders?
It would be good to have that alignment that eventually we want to make a drug that helps people, right? Like, and not getting lost in sort of some academic details or whatever. Many of our founders are actually industry founders from pharma or biotech, with quite some with significant experience. Right. Like Curie is sort of for different founders, right? Can be academics, can be sort of a postdoc, can be a Nobel Prize winner. But it can be pharma executives or like former head of chemistry, like at a company that just got acquired and the person doesn't want to stay there, and like but has sort of that understanding, and can be companies. Therefore, I mean, in the end, the successful biotech is sort of the merge of three things: that the science, the business, science, medicine, and business. And like those three things have to come together. But I think it's maybe not fair or right to demand that from founders to have that all in one person. I think that's most likely a team sport, I think.
And when we talked about one of your partners being from the tech industry, what do you think that Curie successfully learned from the tech industry and is applying? I mean, we talked about the AI that you're using in-house, but in terms of like the philosophy of investing, have you taken some ideas from tech and started applying them, or like given the mentality, sometimes the difference between tech investing and life sciences investing? Is there anything that you're doing differently?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to sort of reconcile the two because they're sort of conceptually very, very different. And it has to do mainly with the fact that returns in that life science investment is the worst thing of investing if you want to invest in something. That's just the truth. I mean, our returns very often in the industry, that is 1.2 or whatever, right? Our biggest successes of returns in a company is like, if you have a 10x, 12x return, it's fantastic, right? For example, you put in $250 million and you have a return for 2.5 billion, then it's just a 10x return. Let's just be clear about that. Therefore, for us, 10x returns are like fantastic. When in tech, you can have a 5,000x return. And it has implication what we do with the other companies. Because if every 10th companies that we invest in has a 10x return, and we write 9 zeros, because it's hard, we said, our fund had a 1x return, which means it didn't make money. It's that simple of a math. And this is different in tech, because if you have a 5,000x return, you can have quite some zeros. And in between, you make money. Okay, therefore, investing in, and this is something that people are not so much aware of. That fact has consequences. And I think investors have done, or the industry has done, 2 things in order to react to that. One is it decided not to take that much risk after all in life sciences. Because if you have your 10x return and the others are not zeros, but a 1.5, a 2x return, whatever, you actually make money. Therefore now you decide, in contrary to tech, that you're not willing to take risk in your portfolio. That's the life science investment thing. Therefore, our investors are enormously experienced and strong and like technically sort of on top of their game. That's not tech. They're like, oh, whatever, like here, take it, right? $100 million for your AI idea. It's total bullshit. Doesn't matter. Believe in you, like whatever. I like you. Here, go, right? That's not life science investing, okay?
Definitely.
If it's like, oh, like what's the thing? What's the risk? Can it be toxic? Like, what can we, whatever? Like, do you have a mouse experiments? Have you shown already? Like that's our industry, okay?
Yeah.
If we're taking little risk. And people need to know that, okay? Seed investment, life sciences, is not an environment of taking a lot of risk. We are willing to take that risk, and we learned that, okay? Because we are willing to write half of them zeros, okay? That's a very important thing because we do more investments. We do 20 companies a year. We have like 30 companies in our portfolio. Like, it's different. That's one. And the second reaction to this, what I described, is the 10x and not working. The second reaction was, as an industry, we decided to overcapitalize our companies. In case the first program fails, and we have already invested, we'll do a second program, and then maybe a third. Therefore, we overcapitalized that, and now we are paying the price. And you all know that. We put $150 million in the Series A, and now in the Series B, it's a down round, because you didn't get to it. And it's killing our industry. And now we have this big issue in the B rounds and the C rounds, nothing going to the IPO and whatever, because like we overcapitalized the industry. Too strong, too much fixed costs, too much buildings, like in HR, like general counsel and all those companies, like, 3 programs, 7 programs, like big things, whatever. It doesn't work. Therefore, that's sort of a second reaction to what we said is like we make small investments, right? We say like $8 million, you can get to sort of your development candidate and dose range finding data. Of course you can if you are really disciplined about it. And now that next round is a step up. And then it works. Because like in our Curie founder own like 25, 30%, like something like that, 40% of the company. Why? Because we appreciate the idea. I just told you that's like, I find it like super fantastic if somebody has a great idea. Therefore, we need to like be honest about it. Not 3% for a founder, it's like what the classical US investment looks like, and then you disappear soon because like we are running the company. No, you should own like, you deserve that for your idea. It's your company, 30 or 40%, like that's what you have. And like, then you have to step up, and then when there's an exit, our founders should own 20 or so %. I think that's appropriate.
somebody.
I absolutely believe in this. If you as a founder sell a company for $1 billion, you should get $200 million. I absolutely believe in that. You deserve that. I don't understand this VC concept that, like, and you have $1.5 million, like you like walk away, and our chairman of the board who like put one signature on the thing and did shit for the thing. Like the guy who watched the Arsenal game, right, with the chips in the thing. It's like, we just scored. It's like, yeah, what did you contribute? Like, you know, like, it's that thing.
Yeah. I mean, someone said to me once, an American investor said, the problem with life sciences exec teams, generally speaking, are that they're embarrassed to make money. Do you think that's compared to tech management teams?
You know, it's also not so easy to make money in our industry, right? If you go to Stanford or like to here, Oxford or whatever, like to the IT department, like it's on everybody's bucket list that they want to start a company. You go to medical school and you ask them how many want to start a company, like, you know, not so many. Therefore, I think it's that, right? It has to do with this. Yeah. But I think yeah.
I mean, that's what, ultimately, you have to make money for your investors. And what you're saying is you want everyone to make money that deserves to make money, that's been part of the process, founders namely.
I mean, I have two reactions. One is like, you know, I think, you know, as a founder, but like as anybody involved, sort of, we ask our founders like pretty soon, like into the company, like, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king or queen, like that is? You make your decision. Because if you want to be king, then run this place. Want to be rich, then like there are better people at certain moments, and you just sort of contribute like your way into that. That's sort of one direction. The other one is I'm not worried about this money thing like at all. I think it's totally like not helpful. But there are steps to getting to this, which is you need to have sort of this brilliant idea. You have to have sort of then the drug embodiment that matches that. Then you need to have sort of a medicine that works in patients. And then you need to have a product that sells. You need all those steps, and they're all super important. But if you then have a drug that is robust, that has an impact on patients, that is a big drug most likely, and then nobody has to worry about anything.
Mm-hmm. Good place to end. We are out of time. We'll just take maybe one or two questions, and then we'll have to wrap up. If there's any questions, just put your hand up in the air. Yes, we have one here. Is there a mic runner around? Yeah. Oh, coming at you here. Whoa, you went by. Yeah.
Now, you receive a lot of deal flow, and you say, okay, 5,000 proposals per year. So it's a lot of stuff to be done. I hope you have some AI support for this. But concerning the setup of a company, when you have a good scientist that has a good idea, you have to deal also with procedures and stuff. You have to do some paperwork with the institution, for example, that might want to have a share in the initiative. Now, the typical model where technology transfer offices offer something off the shelf doesn't work. We need to find science on the ground. Now, how do you deal with institutions to set up a company and to have a smooth process, a smooth translation process, minimizing friction on the ground?
Yeah, I'm looking at Christoph because like Christoph works at Curie and leads all of the external innovation, and like he's now, I hope Christoph is not saying what he's thinking. I always say what I'm thinking anyway, if it doesn't matter. If you were to rank the most unhelpful institutions in the process of drug discovery, I think tech transfer will definitely win. One of the most value-destroying organizations in the industry.
I was expecting this answer.
No, I'm just
I hope
saying.
you work in tech transfer.
By the way, this is a
I know.
motivational sort of statement, because
Eventually.
if you're in tech transfer office, you can change it, because there are some tech transfer offices out there who are fantastic, okay? But they're just rare. That's the thing. But I think it's very important because, like, the best founders work around it anyway. Therefore, like, how can you sort of be helpful? And that needs to be the focus. The focus for tech transfer, this is my big sort of thing, like, for tech transfer, is not to concentrate on, like, how you can be important, but how you can actually be helpful. And when it's about that, then it's about sort of enabling. Then it's about how can this be smooth, how can this be whatever. Because the truth is that most IP that is some shape or form, like, administered by tech transfer, is actually not that impactful or important for a biotech company. Because in most cases, the work that you do on the drug embodiment anyway trumps sort of what sits there on that IP. Therefore, then it's more about enabling. Then it's about, like, could there be ways to further, if this is an academic founder, how can we make this work? 20% of their time, 30% of their time. How do we do it with some poster, with some knowledge transfer, like, with some of the important sort of experience that lies in sort of the academic research that is, or so how can we sort of make this a partnership then that actually helps the biotech company, and there's a real contribution. Now we switch that into something very creative, into something very sort of, fluid and like ecosystem driven, rather than like my IP and like this.
Christoph, we're going to have to stop, unfortunately. Thank you very much. I don't want to interrupt you mid-flow, but we're over by a few minutes. So thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.